Hi, good day. This is Jove Aguas once again, and welcome to my lectures in ethics. And this is now the second lecture on the topic General Introduction to Ethics. The topic of our discussion for today is ethics and or the nature of ethics or moral philosophy. So, I will be discussing in this lecture what is ethics. Uh, First, what is philosophy? What is ethics? What are the things that we discuss in ethics? I will focus on morality, uh, the origin of morality, the applications of morality, and some other concepts related to morality. So let's start with the notion of philosophy. What is philosophy? Okay, so philosophy and ethics. The term philosophy came from two Greek terms, uh, philo or philein, which means love, and sophia, translated as wisdom. Let me explain first what is this meaning of philein or philo as love. The Greeks consider three kinds of love. The first one is eros. Eros is a selfish or a physical or sensual kind of love, right? So it's a kind of love that desires what is good for the self, okay? And basically, for the Greeks, eros is associated with sensual desire. The second is philo or philein. It is a love that addressed to a person or a friend, okay? Love as friendship. So it's a kind of love that seeks for uh, the reciprocity. Now, if you love someone, then you expect that someone to love you back. That's basically the meaning of philein. So it seeks for companionship, right? Uh, Friendly love, or you can say brotherly love. The third one is agape. Agape is the unconditional love. Okay, like for example, the love of a parent for his or her children or child. And of course, in the Christian tradition, agape was associated with the love of God for man. Okay, so three kinds of love for the Greeks. You have eros, self-love. Uh, then second is uh, philo, love for a person, for a friend, friendly love, and agape, the unconditional love. Now, love was for the Greek. They use or in philosophy, the love that is used is love for friendship. Okay. Now, there's a story how this term of love or philosophy, love for wisdom, knowledge, came about. There was this Greek philosopher, uh, Pythagoras. Pythagoras. Pythagoras is considered to be one of the wisest men in ancient Greece. Okay, so he drew lots of philosophers, a lot of followers, and of course his wisdom, his reputation as a wise person, wise man, spread throughout Athens and throughout Greece. And there was also a group of philosophers during his time, contemporary of Pythagoras and many other philosophers, who teach also philosophy and who try to mm, they try to attract students by saying that there are good teachers. Okay, there are good teachers. If you want to be a good lawyer, for example, you study under them because they're very good in debates, in argumentation, in dialectics, etc., etc. They are called the sophists. Sophist. Okay. So one day, when Pythagoras visited a local kingdom, he was asked by the king if he is also a sophist. You know, if he also considers himself to be a wise person, a wise teacher. And Pythagoras just answered, "No, I'm not a sophist." So the king asked him, "If you are not a sophist," uh, by the way, the term sophist came from the word sophoi or sophus. Sophus means wise person. So he was asked if he is a sophus, and Pythagoras said he is not a sophus. So the king asked him, "Then what are you?" And he answered, "I am just a philosophus." By that he means I am just a friend or a lover of wisdom. Okay. So what is the meaning? What is the context or the meaning of Pythagoras' reply? For Pythagoras, nobody can claim that one is really wise. Okay. One cannot really claim that he learned everything. Uh, the best that you can do is to search for wisdom, to love wisdom. And in this context, to love wisdom is to look out or to search for the truth for wisdom so that it becomes your constant companion. Okay. So a philosopher is a seeker of wisdom. Okay. Uh, he does not claim that he has learned everything, but he constantly searches for wisdom. So that's how the term philosophy came about. Philosophy now is love for wisdom or the constant search for wisdom or for the truth. And that's the meaning of philosophy, now coming from its uh, etymology as love of wisdom, right? But of course, later on, it's not that there was no philosophy before Pythagoras. There was philosophy even before the time of Pythagoras. The earlier Greeks, they were already philosophizing. But the term philosophy or philosophia per se was a well was an invention, if to use the term. It was started by Pythagoras himself. Okay, of course there were already terms like wisdom, philo, agape, sophia, etc., etc. Okay, but it was uh, Pythagoras who put together the words philo and sophia. So what is sophia? Sophia is wisdom. Okay, sophia means um a profound, a deep understanding of things, the ultimate causes of things. Okay, so wisdom is different from knowledge because when you say knowledge, well, you can have knowledge about basic facts, basic information, methodologies, formula, the laws, etc., etc., etc. So that when you take the exam, for example, you're going to rely on your knowledge of this information, of this data. But wisdom is different because wisdom is something that provides you with a deeper realization, a profound understanding of what lies beneath those information, those data, those laws, etc., etc. Okay. If I'm going to ask you who is more knowledgeable in your course, for example, in medicine, between you and your parents, most likely you will be more knowledgeable than your parents about with when it comes to the courses that you take. But who would be wiser in terms of life, no? Between you and your parents, life experiences, etc., etc. Well, your parents would definitely would most probably be wiser than you are because wisdom is gained through experience. Okay? So yeah, that's why the more you become mature, the more you become wiser because you understand the underlying meaning or reasons of things. Okay, but in philosophy, of course, we focus on the causes and meaning of reality, and that includes our existence, our life, our action, our conduct, society, um, the world, etc., etc. So, um, philosophy in general would be the love, the constant search for understanding the meaning of all things. Because if you want to be an expert in philosophy, or you want to be a professional, then you study philosophy not just by means of experience, but you have to take certain courses in philosophy. Okay, so now, uh, considering philosophy as a body of knowledge, therefore there are many different areas or branches of philosophy in the study of reality. Okay, so this will include metaphysics, the study of reality in general. Because we are not going to discuss that here. I'm just enumerating some of these branches. The study of correct thinking, logic, then the study of knowledge, epistemology, and the study of the morality of human conduct, and that's what we call ethics. Okay, so ethics is one branch of philosophy that studies the morality of human act. So ethics is concerned with the question whether a human action or a human behavior is good or bad, or right or wrong, or immoral or moral, or ethical or non-ethical or unethical. So that is a question of philosophy to or ethics to answer that question whether, for example, is stealing good or bad? Of course, it's bad, right? And of course, you give reason for saying that stealing is bad because, etc., etc., etc. Or say giving alms to the poor, is it good or bad? Of course, it is right. It is good, and then you give reasons for saying that uh, giving alms to the poor is good. Okay, so let's go now to ethics and morality, and it's already said that we ethics is concerned with right or wrong, or right and wrong. Okay, so the term ethics came from the Greek terms ethos. Ethics from the Greek term ethos, which means character. Ethos, character. So it is commonly used synonymously with morals. So ethics, morals, they're connected, okay, or morality. And therefore, when you say ethical, sometimes we equate that with being moral. Okay, so in a very general sense, in a loose sense, we uh, relate ethics or ethical with moral. Okay. Now, so being moral is usually associated with one value system and the desire to be good. So you want to be moral because you want to be good. But of course, the concept of good is dependent on your value system. Okay. Uh, so, for example, if you value, say, friendship, then friendship would be associated with moral. Right? It's moral. It is good to be a friend. Friendship is good. Okay? Now, being ethical has something to do with following certain rules or guidelines. Of course, uh, there is also a connection between your ethical system and the rules, because if you consider rules as part of your value system, then you're going to act both ethically and morally. Okay, but ethical is more concerned with following certain guidelines. Okay, with certain rules, right? So a moral precept. So I'm now discussing moral. Okay, a moral precept is an idea which is driven by a desire to do something good. You do it because it's your desire to be good. Okay, an ethical code is a set of rules that defines allowable actions or correct behavior. And correct behavior is not always the good behavior. So when you act ethically, you are following certain rules, okay? Because the rules specify what are the actions that are allowable or acceptable or correct. But by following the rules, for example, you are playing basketball, okay? So there are the rules of the game, all right? There are rules of the game. So if you follow the rules of the game, like for example, you cannot do this, you cannot do that, then you are acting ethically. But does it follow that if you are following the rules of basketball, you are after moral behavior, that your action is morally good? They're not the same. Okay, they're not the same. Or for example, in profession, there is professional ethics. There are certain things that are not allowed. Okay, in the practice of your profession, but it does not mean that the correct behavior that is allowed is not necessarily morally good. Okay, of course, a morally good behavior will always be an ethical behavior, right? Because a moral behavior is always a desire to do something good. So if you follow the rules with your desire to be good, then you are acting both ethically and morally. Okay, so to some extent, we can say that at least if you cannot be moral, be ethical. But the ultimate goal should be that you have to be moral. You have to be moral, right? Well, some businessmen, for example, well, I will just follow what is being uh, asked of me from a professional, you know, from a professional point of view. That's the farthest I can go. Okay, so you can say, well, you can maintain some secrets, but is it always good to always? Well, it may be good at some points to maintain secrets, but the two are not the same. Okay, so hence the term moral and ethical both refers to the act or behavior, although they have certain different references. Okay, ethical behavior refers to certain rules, and moral behavior refers to our desire to be good. Okay. Now, let's define now morality. It refers only to human acts. That is, actions. These are actions that proceed from our rationality. So there are three elements here to consider an action to be proceeding from our rationality. One, that it is done with knowledge. We know, we are conscious of what we are doing. Second, that we are free, okay? That it proceeds from our freedom. It was deliberate, right? We were not forced. And third, it is voluntary. You did it on your own, okay? So these are the three elements of human actions. So actions which do not have a rational character can be considered amoral. Okay, they cannot be judged as morally good or morally evil because they did not proceed from knowledge, from our consciousness, or from freedom, or from voluntariness. Okay, so by the way, let me give an example of what is a moral and so what is moral and amoral. For example, uh, uh, you give uh, alms to the poor. Like for example, during the pandemic, you donated. Well, you know what you're doing. You're conscious. You freely do it, and voluntarily you give alms to the poor. That can be considered a human act. Okay. Uh, but suppose you just shouted. Okay. Bigla kang ginulat, no? Bigla kang uh, mayroon ka nakakita nakakagulat, and then napasigaw ka. You shouted. Hindi siya rational. You can call it, St. Thomas Aquinas calls that acts of man, an act of man. That's different from human act. Reading ko ha. Human acts, they proceed from our reason, knowledge, freedom, voluntariness. Okay? Acts of man, they're not considered coming from our reason. Okay? So human acts can be considered moral or immoral, but acts of man are amoral. Amoral. Okay? So you cannot be held responsible for doing things na hindi naman that did not proceed from reason. No? Now, but suppose you shouted at somebody, you cursed at somebody. Now, that's different from all of a sudden you shouted for no reason. Because when you shouted at somebody, you are not conscious, you are not aware of what you did. And you may have some intentions in doing that. The intention could be good or bad, right? So that is not an amoral act. Now, sleeping, is that more immoral? Is that human act or act of man? If you just, because you are so tired, you fall asleep, or in the night you really fall asleep, you can consider it as a human act because it's not rebellious. But if in the class fall asleep, you have the intention of this lecture is boring, I will just sleep, then it can be considered to be either moral or immoral. And so I hope you understand the distinction between human acts and acts of man, and then moral and amoral. Okay? So, if human actions are to be judged whether morally right or good or evil, then there should be something by which our actions should be measured as good or evil. There must be some basis. And we call this the norm or standard of morality. Because you cannot just say stealing is good or sorry, stealing is bad. But why bad? What's the basis? What is standard for saying that stealing is bad? See? So in moral philosophy or in ethics, we deal with the norms or the codes that govern our conduct or act. This code, this norm, this standard, they serve as a guide in determining what are the good actions, what are the bad actions, what are the right actions, what are the wrong actions. There should be a standard, a basis, a norm. Okay, like for example, say um, being honest is good. What is the standard of that? What is the norm of that? Or you say killing is wrong. What is the basis for saying killing is wrong? Well, we can say, well, the standard for that is the norm for that is our respect for life. It violates the norm of the value of life. That's why killing is good. Why is it good that giving alms to the poor is good? Well, because the norm of that is that we have the norm about helping one another. See? So as the study of science or science of the morality of human acts, ethics deals with the issue whether an action is right or wrong and the reasons why this particular action is good or bad or right or wrong. So there should be some reasons. Okay? And the reasons are provided by the norms of morality. Therefore, it does not only say, for example, ethics doesn't just say that abortion is evil. Okay? It also gives the reasons why it is evil. Or why is corruption evil? Well, it gives reasons why corruption is evil. So ethics as a philosophy is the attempt to achieve a more systematic and organized understanding of the nature of morality and what it requires of us, how we ought to live and why. Okay. So there are acts that are ethically neutral, as already mentioned about the acts of man, which means that they do not have a moral value or moral sense. As I already said, they're called amoral. Some people can also be called amoral. They are indifferent to morality, neutral to morality, or they are indifferent to the sense of right and wrong. Or some people are just, they don't care at all whether it's right or wrong. Okay, so there are people who are also amoral because they don't care at all whether what they did is right or wrong. Of course, you can say, well, being indifferent is also immoral because you should also care about what is right or wrong. Okay, but of course, some people are just indifferent, and being indifferent doesn't mean that they are doing the wrong things because it's it's just that they are indifferent to morality. Maybe what they are doing is right or wrong, but for them it's not their concern. Okay? So some aspects of reality are simply out of the realm of morality, and therefore they are regarded as non-moral because they are outside of the sphere of the influence of morality. Like for example, inanimate objects are non-moral. Okay, non-moral because, like for example, a ball pen, this laptop, non-moral because they are out of the sphere or realm of morality. But of course, their use can be considered moral or immoral. Like for example, a knife. Okay, a knife is neutral. I mean, it's outside. Okay, can you say knife good or bad? No. But when you use the knife, okay, to kill someone, then the knife becomes, or the knife now is within the aspect of morality. Okay. Now, what about manners or etiquette? Well, morals is different from them. Morals is concerned with whether something is or an action is right or wrong in the moral sense. And I already mentioned what is the moral sense, right? Manners or etiquette, on the other hand, they are concerned with something or an act or behavior, whether that is socially acceptable or it follows certain social or cultural practice. So it's merely based on taste or social preference. Give you one example: eating using hands. That may be bad manners for people, for some other people, but for us, especially Filipinos, that could be socially and culturally acceptable, especially if you are at home. Okay, so eating using your hands is manners. Of course, it's bad manners if you do that. If you are in a in a formal occasion, you have a formal dinner with a guest. There's the complete set of of the utensils, and then you started eating using your hand. Okay, so that is not proper manners. Okay, because that is not the concern of ethics or morals. Okay. Uh, Now, the origin of morality. Many people the experts who study morality, consider morality to have two origins: subjective origin and objective origin, based on the origin of the value. Okay, so a value can have subjective origin or objective origin, and based on that, morality can also have subjective or objective origin. So, as to the objective origin, there are three possible origins of our values. That one, that values are given by supernatural being, meaning God. Second, that values are part of the fabric of nature. So it's nature that uh, you know our values originated from nature. And third, the values are part of the furniture of the world, meaning a part of the elements of the world, independent of us human beings. Okay, so there is the supernatural, there is the natural, and there is the social. Okay, part of the world, the social origin of our values. These possible explanations of the objective origin of values are expressed in the supernatural theory, in the natural theory, and the theory of objectivism. Okay? Now, as to the subjective, the origin of value is related to us, meaning the human beings are the origins of values. Okay, so without human beings, the subjectivist will say, well, there will be no value at all if there are no human beings. And therefore, there will be no morality at all if there are no human beings. There's no us. Okay, so, well, of course, you can actually combine all these origins. You can also say, well, morality has two origins, the subjective, man, and the objective, whether God. Actually, we can say that all of these, they help form morality, the subjective and the objective, okay, because they are all integral parts of our value system. Okay, so there's actually no it's not really very important to make a distinction, but of course those who study ethics makes this distinction between the subjective and the objective origin of values. Now, there are also two kinds of morality: the customary or traditional and the reflective. Customary or traditional morality is a morality or a moral system that has been handed down to us through customs from generation to generation. Okay, so for example, in our Filipino tradition, there are moral values and moral systems that have been handed to us from our ancestors down to our lolo and lola, parents, and so on. And this will also be handed down to our children and grandchildren, and so on and so forth. Okay, so that's the customary morality or traditional morality. Well, some people call it the static morality because it remains, the same, right? It remains the same. So, for example, we have certain values from our lolo and lola that remain the same. No? Uh, One example is, of course, how we show respect for our elders. Okay, you notice among the Asians, and Filipinos include, of course, how we show respect for our elders. We never call people who we consider to be elders to us by their first name. You don't call your father by his first name, because calling him his first name when you address him, when you talk to him, is rather disrespectful. If your father is Johnny and you want to ask allowance from your father, should you just say, "Hey Johnny, give me some money"? You don't do that. Because that's part of the tradition. Okay, it's quite disrespectful to address your parent with their first name. Of course, we call them uh, mama, papa, daddy, mommy, inay, itay. No? Of course, if somebody asks you what's the name of your father, of course you tell him my father's name is Johnny. Okay. Now the second is the reflective as type of morality. Reflective morality requires that moral ideas are carefully examined and tested. In other words, we try to examine our value system because there may be some parts of our value system that need to be examined, modified, you know, changed, etc. So you sort of try to reflect, examine your morality. Okay. So in the sense, morality could can be changing. Our sense of right or wrong can be changing when you do reflective morality. Now, of course, traditional morality can become reflective and dynamic, especially when those moral ideas that are simply handed down to us are accepted, no, are subjected to analysis and criticism. Okay, so when we criticize, let me get this strong. When we analyze and when we criticize, it doesn't mean that we abandon our traditional or customary morality. It's only that now we understand them better because we analyze them, we reflect on them. Sometimes, like showing respect. See, automatically we just uh, bow or make the gesture of respect, mano or kiss, etc., without fully understanding why we do that. See, but if we reflect on it, then we come to better understand traditional morality. So traditional morality does not remain static. Okay, so we cannot say that, well, I will just follow the traditional morality. Oh, you are so passe, you're so traditional, you're old. I will follow my reflective morality. I will criticize your morality. No, we cannot do that because we can actually combine the two. Okay, the customary morality is good, but it becomes better when it is combined with reflective morality. Because now we understand why we are respecting our elders, why we respect, for example, uh, life, other people, etc., etc. So the practice of morality does not become automatic. Like when you are in the car or you're walking and you pass by a church, people just make the sign of the cross, almost automatically making the sign of the cross. See, so the point there is we have to be more reflective in our practice of morality. We have to understand why we are doing this, and that's how we can combine traditional and reflective morality, so that morality becomes truly meaningful to us. Right? Now, what are the applications of morality? There are four areas where we can apply in religion. So, morality determined by relation by between us and God. Okay. Number two, well, application on the area of nature. Morality is determined by the relation between human being and nature. So, in the first one, in religion, of course, it is applied to how we show respect to God. In the second, in nature, it is reflected on how we show respect to our environment, to nature. This present pandemic is probably because caused by our disregard for nature. We are not applying morality in our relationship with nature. And second is, of course, individuality. Morality uh, is determined by our relationship, the relationship of the individual, our relationship with ourselves. Okay? And the last one is society. There is an application of morality to society, how we live one another in this in society. Okay. So some critical questions here. Is morality a repressive institution? What do you mean by repressive? Because sometimes, well, we talk about whether an action is right or wrong, right? And morality sets standards by which we can measure. or judge whether an action is right or wrong. Okay, and, but sometimes some people they view morality as repressive because it sets rules, standards. Okay, like our uh, that that prevents us from living our life. Our parents, for example, would impose rules that prevent us from living our lives the way we want our lives to be lived. There's so many restrictions because of morality. You cannot do this, you cannot do that. Okay, that this is bad, that is evil, that is immoral, that is not ethical. Don't do that. So to some extent, according to some people, it is repressive because it prevents us from enjoying our life, living our life the way we want our life to be lived. So the question is morality repressive, a repressive institution? The church will always say, ah, don't do that. See? Because that is against the law of God, this is against this, against that, etc., etc. But people nowadays, they want to live their lives to the fullest, enjoy life. So, is it really repressive? Well, the fact that morality imposes certain restrictions, it does not make it repressive at all. Okay? And I would leave you with something to think about. With all these restrictions, is it really repressive? Okay? And I have my some points here, but I will not discuss it anymore. But I will leave you with some questions for discussions. And it's for you to reflect on this. How important do you think is ethics in your would-be career? You want to be a doctor? How important is ethics in your medical practice in the future? Second, is our modern world, in our modern world, do you think we need to follow the traditional or the reflective type of morality and why? My personal opinion. And think, do you consider morality to be oppressive? Okay? So thank you very much for listening, and be safe. And I think this is already good for the second week of our class. And well, watch out for the third lecture. Thank you very much.